After nearly 2 months of lockdown in Shanghai, authorities announced that the lockdown will be gradually lifted and public transportation will be restored from May 16th. Thus, we see this scene in the streets of Shanghai. This is the third day after the supposed lifting of the lockdown. Neighborhoods are still blocked. Some residents can travel for a short period of time, or about 1 or 2 hours. In those precious 2 hours, getting a haircut has been one of the wishes of many residents. We can have a look at the photo of this man taken at home on May 22nd. He wrote on social media, "This is done to me. Every morning, the neighborhood committee gives out the task of doing the nucleic acid test to catch the positives. It has to be completed within a time frame. That is, from when the notice is given at 9 a.m. to 12 noon. By looking at his hair, you can tell that during the lockdown, it was a luxury to keep one's hair neatly tended. The man is a well-known tycoon living in Shanghai who once bought a Tang Dynasty embroidered art piece for $52 million and a Ming Dynasty cup for over $36 million in a 2014 auction in Hong Kong. A Chinese netizen left a comment, "In the face of a major disaster, both the poor and the rich live undignified. It's good enough to stay alive and have food. I guess he doesn't cut his own hair." The Shanghai tycoon, who once flung over 200 RMB for a cup, is probably thinking, how did the iron fist of socialism land on my head too? On May 23rd, Shanghai had 1,774 designated areas under closed-off management that involve around 420,000 people, 8,772 restrictive controlled areas covering some 1.47 million people, and 61,040 preventive areas involving about 21.35 million people. But official announcements by the Communist Party are often questioned, and their past credibility is less than stellar. Here is a Reuters video of the streets of Shanghai from May 21st to 23rd, where the once bustling city is still empty. From the various information circulating among the public and the frontline interviews of overseas Chinese media, it seems that Shanghai is still far from being truly unblocked. Many people from outside Shanghai who are trapped in the city are not enthusiastic about returning to work upon hearing the government's announcement of unblocking, but rather seize the opportunity to flee the city. Look, this man decided to dismantle his houseboat, strapped on a life ring, and fled Shanghai by water. Of course, the regular escape route is through the Shanghai Hangzhou train station. Tomorrow's train.
But you're leaving today?
Yes, going back to Jiangxi province. Many foreigners are also fleeing. The Wall Street Journal reports that a New York-based immigration attorney says that immigration inquiries from Chinese high-net-worth individuals and middle-class professionals have been 10 times higher in the past 2 months than they were in the same period last year. These immigration attorneys feel that the situation is like going back to 1949 when the Chinese Communist Party seized power through war, causing large numbers of wealthy Chinese to flee the country.
这里过去至少得半个小时，哦，半个小时能不能出啊？不一定呢。啊？对，还半个小时还不一定呢。
Now the Shanghai government claims that it plans to lift the lockdown in June, but such a claim shouldn't be believed by either foreigners, people from out of town, or local Shanghainese, because on March 22, 2022, news broke on the Chinese internet that Shanghai was going to make a big move and would be closed for 7 days after the Chinese State Council inspection team arrived in the city. The Shanghai Municipal Public Security Bureau responded in the early hours of March 23rd that this rumor is false and reported that the 2 people who made the rumor were being investigated by the police. The government notice reads, "A reminder from the police that the internet is not a place beyond the law and that the general public should obtain information on epidemic prevention from official channels, not to believe in rumors, not to spread rumors, and not to fabricate or forward unverified information." But we all know what happened later in the story. At the end of March, Shanghai was under citywide lockdown until now. This is a reflection of the lack of credibility of this government. Netizens in Shanghai told the outside world, "If I weren't in Shanghai, I would have believed that Shanghai was unblocked. Who is the strongest at formality politics? Shanghai, of course. People from outside the city are watching the news and saying that Shanghai has been unblocked, but Shanghai people don't know about it yet."
共同见证开平路方舱、教育学院方舱 关舱的仪式，这2个方舱的关舱。
In reality, there are a lot of restrictions even if people are allowed to travel. For example, one needs to show a bunch of documents, including a green health code, a valid nucleic acid report within 48 hours, and a neighborhood access card, which usually requires residents to return to the neighborhood within 1 or 2 hours. In addition, the percentage of passes issued in a neighborhood is small. For example, for a neighborhood with more than 1,000 households, only 100 passes are usually issued, some of which are determined by random draw. In some cases, residents with passes are escorted by the neighborhood association staff and they can only go outside once a week. In some communities, after more than 2 months of lockdown, residents are allowed a 4-hour shopping window to shop at designated supermarkets. In many cases, shopping trips are guarded by police and epidemic prevention personnel. In addition to the documents mentioned before, some districts have created a new pass, the Walk Pass. To be fair, such a pass has illustrated the government's intention more precisely, which is, it prefers residents to move around close to their homes rather than travel to places far away. Shanghai's neighborhoods are divided into different zones based on risk levels such as restrictive controlled zones and preventive zones. Preventive zones are less risky. Some neighborhoods have reached the standard of unlocking with no new cases for weeks, but the grassroots officials have increased their control, with neighborhood committees refusing to issue exit permits and restricting residents from going out, causing public outcry.
If we aren't provided with exit permits, since Huixianju neighborhood is already a preventive zone with no positive cases, it has exceeded the unlocking standard set by Shanghai's epidemic prevention policy. We will lift the restrictions ourselves and have free access.
There are many foreigners living in this neighborhood. Perhaps it has given the residents more nerve. The story of the self-liberating neighborhood has been circulating in WeChat groups. The public is overwhelmingly applauding and praising it. Of course, the goal of the neighborhood residents is just to get an access pass and have a certain amount of time to go out. On May 24th, news also spread that residents of another neighborhood were getting out of their homes at night and taking a group walk on the street.
Are you from the Dingyuan neighborhood?
Yes.
Right on. 加油. It's long overdue.
We also want to come out.
We too. We live in a preventive zone as well. You're doing well. We applaud you.
Controlled and isolated at her home in Shanghai, the VP of China Chief Economist Forum Research Institute and a former chief economist of the Yuan Fund recently posted on Weibo that her credit card bill for May was only 11.4 RMB or US $1.70. It prompted an account manager from China Merchants Bank's private banking department to call her from its Shenzhen headquarters to express concern. She wrote, "I guess the account manager thought I had ditched the China Merchants Bank and changed to another bank because the monthly bill wouldn't have been so low. 11.4 RMB, even if I went bankrupt or became unemployed." She also wrote that those who said fighting the outbreak at all costs did so because they weren't part of the cost themselves. One user left a comment, "Keep on being silent, keep on insisting on zero COVID, you will see the cost." According to notices online, some neighborhoods have imposed so-called silent periods on the residents. It lasts 2 or 3 days, during which residents aren't permitted to leave their homes. It's the latest term coined by the CCP as a similar alternative to a city lockdown. In order to avoid the public's disgust with the city's lockdown, the CCP has come up with a new term, silent management, in response to the recent widespread resurgence of the outbreak in Tianjin, the city that's neighboring Beijing. The Shanghai Bureau of Statistics announced that the output value of industrial enterprises of scale fell more than 60% in April compared to the same month last year, with almost all industries showing recession. Shanghai is the economic center of China. Its lockdown not only profoundly affects China's economic performance, but also exacerbates tensions in the world supply chain. The Shanghai lockdown has therefore had a significant impact on the image of the Chinese Communist Party in the international arena. But, as the glorious Great and Right Party, the CCP would never admit that its anti-epidemic measures such as the zero-COVID policy and harsh lockdowns are extreme or even ineffective. Frankly, the CCP doesn't have better ideas to deal with the emerging COVID variants. Therefore, the CCP is caught in a dilemma. After the Shanghai government announced the resumption of business and production in 3 phases starting on May 16th, a number of confirmed cases surfaced on May 20th, leading to a further escalation of the control measures. Today is May 19th. The government said that Shanghai has resumed work and production. But the road is empty. This is the present situation. I don't know where those people are after they have resumed work and production. It can be speculated that due to concerns of economic pressure and international image, the CCP also wants to lift restrictions on Shanghai. But the number of infected cases popping up everywhere makes it fear a massive resurgence of the outbreak. So, the CCP is wavering between lockdowns and opening up.
Didn't the government announce to lift the lockdown? Why is it blocked again? The wire mesh doesn't cut it anymore. It's now the iron plate. What's happening? We're all confused. Such moves, they're making us panic again. It feels like they're going to seal off the place again.
The same chaos that was seen in Shanghai under lockdown continues in all corners of the city.
We're waiting for supplies to be given out, but the anti-epidemic workers are selling these donations.
Group purchase stuff isn't allowed to enter the neighborhood. We want supplies. We want supplies.
We want supplies. We want supplies. The government agencies are selling donations to us. Monetize the donations.
This is a fire exit. If you dare block it, I will call the police. I'm making a video now. I tell you, you can report to your superiors, but this is a fire exit. If you dare to block it, I will call the police. This is a fire escape. There are words marked inside. If you block it, I will call the police. At night, the sound of banging pots on tall residential buildings continues to reverberate in the city. It's a voice that says, "We are still hungry and we want food."